Mexico. A country caught between continents, politics, and human desperation. Every year, hundreds of thousands of migrants travel north through its territory, chasing the promise of a better life in the United States. But what few realize is how much Mexico itself has changed, from being a country migrants pass through to one at the center of a global humanitarian and political storm. In this video, we uncover what Mexico is actually doing to solve the immigration crisis, the policies, the pressures, and the reality behind the headlines. For decades, Mexico was known as a land people left. Millions of Mexicans crossed the northern border in search of jobs, safety, or opportunity. But today, the picture is very different. Mexico is now a country people are passing through, and increasingly, a country they're staying in. The shift began quietly. Political instability, poverty, and violence across Central America, especially in Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador, pushed families northward. In recent years, new waves from Haiti, Venezuela, and even parts of Africa have joined them. Many arrive in southern Mexico, hoping to move through quickly, but Mexico's government, under enormous pressure from both Washington and its own citizens, is no longer letting that happen freely. President Andrés Manuel López Obrador, known by his initials AMLO, faced a defining challenge during his term, balancing humanitarian ideals with political realities. The United States demanded action to slow the flow of migrants. Mexico's southern border with Guatemala became the new front line. 2019, when Washington threatened tariffs on Mexican exports, the Mexican government responded fast. It deployed thousands of National Guard troops to intercept migrants, established new checkpoints, and expanded migrant detention facilities. In months, the number of crossings dropped. From the outside, it looked like success. Inside Mexico, though, the pressure was just beginning. The government didn't rely on force alone. It created new humanitarian visa programs, temporary papers allowing migrants to live and work legally while their asylum cases were reviewed. The agency in charge of refugees, known as COMAR, saw its caseload explode. In 2013, Mexico received just over 1,000 asylum requests. By 2023, that number had climbed to more than 100,000 per year, one of the highest in the world. These applications come from families fleeing gangs in Honduras, farmers escaping drought in Guatemala, and political dissidents from Nicaragua and Venezuela. The sudden scale turned Mexico's immigration policy into something far more complicated, a blend of enforcement and empathy. At the southern border, the small city of Tapachula became the face of the crisis. Once a quiet agricultural hub, it is now a bottleneck. Thousands of migrants wait there, some for weeks, others for months, as Mexican authorities decide whether they can travel north legally or must remain in place. Camps overflow, temporary shelters spill into city streets. NGOs and church groups scramble to provide food and medical care. Local frustration has grown, but so has local resilience. Many migrants have opened shops, learned Spanish, and found informal jobs. Tapachula has become a microcosm of Mexico's new reality, a place where migration isn't an event, but a permanent condition. Mexico's response operates on three fronts: enforcement, cooperation, and integration. On enforcement, the National Guard continues to patrol highways and train routes used by migrants. The aim is to prevent dangerous journeys and discourage the human smugglers known as coyotes. But the results are mixed. Reports of abuse and overcrowded detention centers have drawn criticism from human rights groups. The Mexican government insists its policies are about order and safety, not punishment. Still, every checkpoint and arrest carries a moral weight. How do you protect borders without forgetting the humanity of those crossing them? On cooperation, Mexico has become an essential partner for the United States. Through agreements like Remain in Mexico, thousands of asylum seekers have been required to wait on Mexican soil while their U.S. immigration cases move through American courts. This has effectively turned Mexico into a buffer zone between Central America and the United States. A controversial role, but one that gives Mexico leverage in trade and diplomacy. On integration, Mexico is trying something new, turning migration from a temporary emergency into a long-term economic opportunity. In cities like Monterrey, Tijuana, and Mexico City, the government and private sector have begun offering jobs to migrants with legal status. Children are being enrolled in public schools. Refugees are entering the workforce in factories, restaurants, and logistics companies. International organizations such as the United Nations and the International Organization for Migration help fund and coordinate these programs. But Mexico's challenges go deeper than paperwork. The geography itself is part of the problem. With more than 7,000 miles of borders and coastline, controlling every crossing is impossible. The Isthmus of Tehuantepec, a narrow stretch of land connecting the Gulf of Mexico and the Pacific Ocean, has become a key corridor, not just for migration but for trade. The government is investing heavily in that region through the Interoceanic Corridor project, hoping new infrastructure and jobs will make people less likely to migrate. At the same time, Mexico is building and renovating temporary shelters across its northern border. Cities like Reynosa, Ciudad Juarez, and Tijuana now host tens of thousands of people, waiting for U.S. appointments through digital systems such as CBP One, the mobile app used to request asylum interviews. The shelters are funded jointly by local governments, charities, and international aid. These efforts show that Mexico is no longer treating migration as someone else's problem. It is reshaping its cities, budgets, and foreign policy to manage a movement of people larger than anything the country has seen in modern history. The politics of migration in Mexico are delicate. The left-leaning government frames its policy as humanitarian control, a mix of compassion and sovereignty. Officials argue that simply letting migrants pass unchecked leads to tragedy, drownings in rivers, deaths in freight trains, exploitation by criminal networks. Instead, they say, Mexico must regulate the flow, even if that means slowing it down. Critics, however, see something else. They argue that U.S. pressure has turned Mexico into an extension of America's border policy. Each time Washington tightens its own immigration system, Mexico absorbs the overflow. The result is a growing population of displaced people with limited options, living in limbo across Mexican territory. Still, some progress is undeniable. Mexico has become one of Latin America's top destinations for asylum seekers. In 2024, it ranked among the world's top 10 recipients of refugee applications. While resources are stretched thin, Mexico's willingness to grant residency and work permits sets it apart from many other transit countries. There's also a quieter revolution happening inside Mexican society. Public opinion on migrants has softened in some areas and hardened in others. In border towns, fatigue is real. Locals worry about security, housing, and competition for jobs. Yet in larger cities, migration has brought new labor, culture, and diversity. Restaurants now serve Venezuelan arepas beside tacos. Haitian Creole mixes with Spanish in marketplaces. This social adaptation is part of what Mexico's government hopes for, a gradual normalization of migration as part of national life, rather than a crisis to be solved. Meanwhile, Mexico's next generation of leaders faces a defining question. Can the country continue to play both roles, U.S. partner and humanitarian protector, without collapsing under the strain? President Claudia Sheinbaum, who succeeded AMLO, has pledged to maintain Mexico's humanitarian commitments while strengthening border infrastructure. Her administration plans to invest in southern development, expand asylum offices beyond Tapachula, and coordinate directly with Central American governments to create jobs closer to home. This is where Mexico's strategy aligns with its long-term vision, addressing migration not at the border, but at its source. The government has proposed regional programs to build roads, schools, and small businesses in Central America, a kind of Marshall Plan for the South. By improving conditions in neighboring countries, Mexico hopes fewer people will feel forced to migrate in the first place. But even as policy evolves, human stories define the crisis more than politics ever could. Along the train tracks known as La Bestia, the Beast, migrants still cling to moving freight cars, risking injury and death to reach the north. In shelters, children practice Spanish, while parents check phones for updates on asylum interviews. On the streets of Tijuana, newly arrived families sell handmade crafts while waiting for news from U.S. immigration courts. Behind every statistic is a person, and Mexico now carries responsibility for millions of them. Mexico's efforts are far from perfect. Enforcement remains inconsistent. Corruption still undermines progress, and the balance between compassion and control continues to shift with each political wave. But in scale, ambition, and complexity, Mexico's approach stands out. It's one of the few developing nations simultaneously acting as a country of origin, transit, destination, and return, all at once. That makes it not just part of the immigration story, but one of its main characters. The world often looks to Washington when talking about migration, but perhaps it should look further south. Mexico is where the policies meet the people, where diplomacy, economics, and survival collide. Its cities are learning to absorb change. Its borders are learning to adapt, and its leaders are learning that migration is not a storm to wait out, but a climate to live with. The crisis isn't over. It may never be. But through cooperation, control, and compassion, Mexico is trying something few countries dare to attempt, turning movement into management, chaos into coexistence, and crisis into strategy. And that, perhaps, is what makes Mexico's story one of the most important geopolitical experiments of our time.